growing up in the era that I grew up in, I've often taken democracy for granted. And I've succumbed to a kind of progressive view of history. We're reading the author Timothy Snyder, who wrote the book on tyranny, and for the class. And he writes about this, he calls it the politics of inevitability that Americans have. We just think things are going to get progressively better and better and better, right? But that's not the case if you look at history. Democracy has to be protected. We have to be vigilant about it. When you go back and study the civil rights movement, we made a lot of gains in the 60s and 70s. The school that I described that shaped me so much, that was integrated because the Supreme Court decided to implement policies that would force the South to integrate its schools, those schools are no longer integrated. They're segregated now. My niece and my nephew are now going to a mostly white public school that for me was half black, most African American teachers. So we're going backwards in time right now. And that's what led to Donald Trump. It's not as though, Trump isn't the disease itself. The disease goes back decades. Resegregation started happening in the 80s because of policies that we set. Wealth is getting concentrated, and we're becoming more of an oligarchy, with a few families like the Murdochs and the Koch brothers being able to buy off elections. So if we don't reverse that, if we don't get to the roots of that problem, which is several decades old, and if we don't speak up morally about what we want as a people, we're sliding into tyranny. Trump is accelerating that. But part of, I think, what has enabled democracy to shift at various times in history is obviously people organizing, and faith communities have been a big part of that, of shaping, again, with this idea of love of neighbor. You have to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Each and every person is created in the image of God. That leads to a wholly different worldview than a white supremacist has. White supremacists actually have an intellectual tradition that they're drawing off of that is decades old and goes back to the early 20th century, maybe even further back. I'm still reading and learning about it. But that ethic looks at the Judeo-Christian ethic of love of neighbor as weak, as something that has to be eradicated from our democracy. So we're actually at war with people who intellectually try to justify a whole different worldview. And the strongest thing we have at our disposal to fight that is our moral worldview and what Jesus taught us.